Welcome to Sparking Everyday Discipleship, where we discuss books and resources and how to disciple our children, encouraging and empowering parents to spark important conversations for everyday discipleship every day. I'm your host, Terrie Hellard-Brown, and we're so glad you've chosen to spend some time with us today. This week, we are doing another special episode of Sparking Everyday Discipleship because I want to talk to those parents and those moms who feel called to write. We have a wonderful retreat coming up that I want to tell you about. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about the why. Why do we want to write? Why do we feel so compelled sometimes to write? And so I want to talk about that because that's really important to nail down why you feel called to do this. Now, number one, it may just be that you have a burning passion to speak to this next generation and to write something that will leave a legacy of your faith and the things you want to share with the children in the next generation, to share with the children of the world. And it could be a calling you sense that God has put on your heart. And that's something you have to do it because he's called you to it and you love it. That's awesome if that's what it is. But there are a whole lot of other reasons we may feel compelled to write. So let's talk about a few of those. And let me just start by saying whatever the reason is, it's pretty legit because it's something that is pushing us to do something, to write, to get words on paper. One of those that we ignore a lot is that we want to write something for our own children, our own grandchildren. And God may never want us to publish beyond that. My very first book I originally wrote it for my family. And I wound up printing about 200 copies, sold out of that, printed it again, sold out of those. I still have from the third or fourth printing of it, I have a few left. And it wasn't great writing. I didn't have a professional editor. It was just from my heart. And it was a devotional book about being a mom and about God's Father's heart, his heart of being our Father. And it was a wonderful book for me to write because it was fun for me and it has been fun for my kids to have that. But then other people liked it. So that was kind of a cool thing. But a lot of times I've been in critique groups where we critiqued this memoir from a friend, and it was an amazing book, very interesting. She lived through the 60s with the hippies and the flower child mentality and all of that, and lived through a lot over her years. And she wanted to write this for her family, kind of a family history. And when we finished, we tried to get her to consider submitting it to be traditionally published by someone because it was such an interesting and intriguing book, but she didn't have any interest in that. She just wanted to print it for her family. And so if that's what you're wanting to do, that is so great. I would encourage you to do what I didn't do and what she did. She had our critique group go over her book with her and help her fine tune it. And oh my goodness, it just became really amazing. And I still think it's worth spending the money to have a professional editor go through your book and help you fine tune it. Because if this is something you're writing for future generations in your own family, to have it be a really well-written volume for them to pass down from generation to generation is just a cool thing. So that is a very legitimate calling, a very legitimate desire and goal. Don't shy away from that. That is absolutely awesome. If you get into a critique group, they're going to still critique it with you and go through it with you. An editor is still going to go through it with you. And you're talking about not very expensive to print it. Most of the time you can do a paperback through Amazon, print on demand. There's several printing companies I've worked with for just small runs that it's a reasonable amount of money. So it's not a huge investment, but it is worth a little bit of investment to get a good, solid book written that is well written. And so I do still recommend hiring an editor after you've gone through critique group with it. And then there's what I call the therapy reason. Sometimes we need to write our story to process our story. Some of you may journal, you may keep a diary, and just do that every day and work through those things. Maybe you need to write letters to those who have hurt you just to get it like off your chest and out of your mind, and then to be able to forgive them and let go of that and move on. Sometimes you feel like you're supposed to go beyond that, but let me caution you, this is something we often as critiquers and editors talk with people about, is make sure you've healed first before you go to publish your writing. However, if you are going to seek publishing of your book and you've gone through some trauma, abuse, something that you're working through, you have to go through the healing process first. The book doesn't come together till you've gone through the healing. And I've shared this before on talking about our testimonies and how our testimony is powerful when we can show how God has brought us through. And there's a message. There's something wonderful that glorifies and honors God. And that's what happens when we're writing a memoir or we're writing even a novel where we're working through those things. We have to be at the place where we have healed, where we can talk about it without crying and be able to share our story. And the reason for that is, first of all, we honor God. We're showing what God has done, the healing process he has brought us through, how he walked with us through it. Otherwise, we're just sharing trauma. And we're just like a gossip session. I mean, it's not necessarily because we're talking about ourselves, but when you get together with someone and you just complain and you just talk through the pain and want someone to hear you, that is important. And we do want to do that, but we want to have something to share with someone. The so what? Yes, you've gone through trauma, and I don't want to respond to someone who's gone through trauma with a so what, but hope you understand what I'm saying. For the other person, how is this going to minister to them? If we are just wanting people to minister to us, we share our story as we're going through the pain and we're struggling with it and we're wrestling with it and we're wrestling with our faith and the word of God and everything else. We're not ministering to that person. That person is ministering to us. It's the same with our book. If we haven't worked through the trauma, it may be an important story and it may be traumatic and very dramatic. And our friend helps us through that by our critique group, by walking us through it and helping us work through all those things. But there's a couple things we have to be aware of. Number one, are we really ministering to our reader? Are we meeting a need with them, or are they just able to commiserate with us? And two, are we going to trigger someone who's also been through trauma? Because we're not bringing them through a healing. We're bringing them into the midst of our pain, and it triggers their pain. And so instead of helping someone, we're actually harming them and hurting them by causing them to go into trauma maybe they weren't ready to deal with or talk about. So the idea of writing a book as therapy is legit. It's real. If your critique group is open to it, you need to really be careful that there's not someone in the critique group who's going to be triggered by what you're sharing. So you need to be really upfront about what you're doing and that you're working through it. But most of the time, when you're still working through it, the best thing is just to keep journaling, just to keep writing. Wrestle with those truths, wrestle with the reality of what you've lived through and what God has done in your life in spite of or because of what you've been through, and let him bring you to the place of healing and wholeness on the other side of the trauma, and then write your story and then bring it to the critique group. And you can help bring healing and wholeness to other people because of what God has done in your life. So it's a legitimate reason to start writing for sure, but not necessarily a legitimate reason to publish. So there's the stories that we're writing for our families, for our children, and there's the stories we're writing for ourselves to work through whatever we need to work through. And then if we have that calling and that passion that we want to write and get our writing published for people to buy, for people to read, to be in library bookshelves, then we need to decide which way we're going to go with that. Now, there are some who write out of a conviction from God, and there are some who write out of a conviction from their own soapbox. That's, I think, a good way to put it. A political agenda. For children's writing, that one just bothers me so much. I don't like it. I really, really don't like it. And I haven't seen excellent children's books written when it's from a soapbox. There are ways to tell stories where there's a moral to the story that the child sees, that the characters discover, that is fun and interesting. You know, it's a fairy tale, it's your folk tales. They all have morals, but they aren't preaching at you. And if you're writing out of a sense of indignation and political determination, usually what happens is the story is just full of that and preaching. The child doesn't get to discover anything. The child doesn't get to enjoy anything. In fact, they can feel our angst and anger and frustration in the words, and you see children become bitter and angry, and they just spout off these political truths that are not always truths, but they are convictions. And it's so, so sad. When I was a teacher and I would see that, it would break my heart to just see how children basically were being brainwashed because the people they trust were spouting these things to them all the time, and they hear what we say. We have to be careful. And it doesn't matter which side you're on, it still happens. And I think it's sad. We certainly don't want to make children's books be that. We want children's books that delight children, that cause their minds and their eyes and their hearts to open up to real truth and the goodness in life. And, you know, like I think C.S. Lewis and Chesterton both talk about how there's going to be villains. There's going to be the bad guys, the wolf, the dragon, you know, in the stories. So let them see the heroes. Let them see the hope of those who come to our rescue, or the strength of someone who can stand up and fight the dragons. We need to let them see the good in the world as well, because they're going to see the bad. And so let's let children's literature delight and challenge and encourage and help children to grow in their determination and their wonder of life and creativity and all that's out there. Help them to find joy rather than to find such discouragement. We have to be careful with that. I don't think personally that that's a legitimate reason to be writing children's books, is that you have a political agenda that you want to spout off about and put it in a children's book. I really don't. But we all do it a little bit. We all have our thing that we talk about. I talk about salvation. I talk about God. And those things come through my stories. I want children to know that they were fearfully and wonderfully made, and that God doesn't give up on them, that he who began a good work in you will continue it. To me, that's hope. That's good things, but I do include it. And I know there's people who would disagree with me, who don't believe in God and who don't want those things told to their children. But my books, that's where we are. So I'm honest and upfront about that. I think when people are honest and upfront about it, then if they've gotten on their soapbox and they've written an activist type story, at least we know what we're getting if we check that book out. But it's not my favorite. I'd rather have a fun story that will give them humor and let them see something to investigate a little more or think about. Then we have to decide when we're going to publish, if we're going to go indie, traditional, or hybrid. Okay, indie is independent. You just take the reins and you do it all yourself. You do the publicity, the printing. Hopefully you get someone to help you with the critiquing and editing, but you hire those people yourself. And if you don't know how or where to find them, you can talk to someone like us at Hyperbole Publishing, and we can get you in touch with different editors, illustrators, critique groups that we partner with. So that's one way to do it. Another way is to go to a group like Readsy. There's different ones that can just help you find the editors you need, and you can just do it all yourself. And you don't have an agent, you don't have a coach, you don't have anyone helping you walk through it. You just kind of learn as you go. And you can get into writers groups that can kind of guide you. And so that's the independent way to go. And with Hyperbole, we do an independent way for you. We do coaching. And so you choose from a menu what you need. I need help finding an illustrator. I need help with finding your critique group, but I've got my editor. I don't, I've got my publisher that is interested in my book. Whatever you have, then you just pick and choose what you need and pay for that as you go along. That's the way we're doing it. There's hybrid, where you pay a certain amount and they will do certain things and you will do certain things. And it's a partnership. If you read the contract, you know what you're getting and what you're not getting. I've heard some people complain about hybrid. The two things I hear is that they didn't help me at all. They didn't do what I thought they were going to do. So my first question with that is, well, what did your contract say? Did they fulfill their contract, or did they breach the contract? If they fulfilled the contract, then that's on us. We didn't read the contract. But if they didn't follow through, then that's not good. And do whatever you need to do with that. The other thing with hybrid publishing is you can get vanity press. Vanity press, it's like, when you ask AI a question and you haven't put any of the prompts in to tell it to be truthful and all of that, AI's purpose is to make you feel good and to flatter you and to tell you what it thinks you need to hear or want to hear. And it's not very reliable when its main goal is to make you happy, right? Well, a vanity publisher is that kind of a thing. They may or may not help you edit your book. They may just say, this is wonderful. Here you are. Pay for it. You got it. You're just paying for the process. And you usually pay a lot more than if you were doing it where you went to some printer and just had it printed on your own. So be aware, look at reviews and find out what ones are reliable and have a good contract and a good opportunity. Understand that if you are going independent, but you're using a hybrid situation or a coaching situation, you're going to pay for those things. It isn't cheap. So then we come to traditional. If you want to go traditional, this is a long process and it takes patience, but it is still doable. And with traditional publishing, you usually, not always, you usually need an agent. So that's the first thing you're going to want to start thinking about. You could pitch your ideas to an agent. You can send proposals to an agent. If you're writing novels, you send the first 1 or 2 chapters to them with the concept of what your novel is, and they might pick it up. If you're writing children's books, of course, you can send the whole manuscript. There are some publishers that don't require you to have an agent, and they will let you know when you can submit your manuscripts directly to the publisher, and they will weed through them and let you know if they want to talk to you some more. That is also a very long process, and you've got to be patient. Patience is the key word here. The other thing is keep track. Keep a list of who you've submitted to, what the responses were, and set a goal for 100 rejections, 1,000 rejections, whatever, but set a goal for lots of rejections because you're going to get them. It just is the nature of it all. Now, let's say you do find an agent and they're pitching your stories to the big publishers and one of your stories is picked up. Then you have another waiting game. It's going to be a year or 2 before it's published. And when it's published, we think that they're going to just publicize it, and they will. I mean, a good company will. So there are some that really do help you publicize your books, and they're really good at it. But there's some that it's on you. They may give you a budget to work with to help pay for advertising. They may not. Be very clear from the beginning what you're doing, what they're doing, what's required, what your agent's going to help with. My advice to every writer out there is learn everything you can. Go to conferences, go to retreats, take classes online, learn the business, learn how it all works, and then make your decision. Pray about it. I prayed a lot about what I was going to do before I finally realized I was going to go independent, and before I realized I was going to start my own little publishing company. It was a lot of prayer and seeing what God had for me. And for years, I was looking for an agent. I had an agent who was interested at one point, and I didn't have peace about it. And then I thought about, actually a couple times, different agents were interested in things, but it just didn't feel right. It just wasn't right. I just sensed that God was leading me to go independent. That's what I've done. And I haven't done a great job of publicity on some of my books because I've been learning as I went along. That's what a lot of us do. I know of one guy who he has learned every part of the publishing industry. And one side note right here, because we do talk a lot about homeschooling and discipling our children. I've had this one writer on my podcast, Millie, who has written several novels as a teenager, and she has also learned everything about the publishing business because her parents had her learn it as a homeschooler. So she knows the whole publishing process. She knows all of that, and she has done really, really well. So learn the process, learn the business, help your kids to learn the business. And if they're really gifted to write, and even if they're not, maybe they would find a job as an editor or as an agent in the future. You never know. But I think whatever our kids are doing, especially if they want to be a writer or an illustrator, have them learn the ropes and use it as part of their education. Let them learn every part of it: editing, critiquing, line editing, and concept editing, and all of those things that are out there for them to learn. Learn about pricing, learn about how it gets into the bookstores, distribution, making book trailers to publicize the books, social media, and how to maneuver all of that without it taking over your life. Look at contracts and how to read a contract. Those kinds of things will really teach your child a lot that goes beyond just this industry, that spills over into whatever they do, buying a house in the future or getting a job overseas and looking at the contract and knowing what it says. All of those things, helping with launching a book. You can do a whole business just having launches for authors, helping them to get their books out there. You have to know social media. You have to know how to make it work. There's a lot to it, but the people who know these things, they can make good decisions for themselves and see their books do better. Choose which way you want to go. There's no right or wrong. You just need to do what the Lord is putting on your heart to do, and recognize that if He's put a book and a story on your heart to write it, your part is to be faithful to do that and then to see what He wants to do with it. Another thing I do, and you may want to adopt it too, is I keep a running list of ideas. I've always done that. I have a list of probably 100 story ideas that maybe someday I'll write them. I don't know. But if you want to be a career writer, you want to make this something that you want to do the rest of your life, these are the things I recommend. The first thing you've got to do, if you've got a story that you think is ready to go to an agent or an editor, go to a critique group. And I've talked a lot about how important critique groups are. I have an episode coming up where we're going to talk about that specifically. But find a critique group. Critiquing is different from editing. It is an amazing gift that we give each other in critiquing. Think about where you're going. Think about what your goals are. What is God calling you to? And recognize that it's all good, that God's got a purpose in all of it, whether He wants you to publish or not. He's going to use it in your life because writing is therapy and it's amazing, and storytelling is something that we have had from the beginning of mankind. And so it is fun to be a part of that. So if you have any questions, please put those underneath the show notes. There's a place for comments. We will get back to you. We try to answer all the questions, and let us know if there's something about this that has triggered some questions for you. I hope this helps you. And as I was saying, we do have a retreat coming up that is just an amazing retreat for those of you who are Christian, children's book writers, and illustrators. It is August 19th through 23rd, 2026. And we're hoping possibly to have it every year, but for sure we're having it in August. And we are meeting in a castle in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. It is going to be an adventure. It is going to be amazing. and we want to fill every spot. We don't have that many spots. They will be filled before we meet. But so, you need to respond now. If you feel the tug that this is something God wants you to do, then fill out the form and reserve your seat today. I'll put the link in the show notes. You can link right to it. It is going to be amazing, and you are getting more than your money's worth, because you will walk away from this retreat having talked about the business of writing and how to make money in this business today. We're also going to be talking about how to create a story. We're also going to talk about how to work with an illustrator and what makes a good illustration. We're going to talk about goal setting and the business of what kind of writing we should be doing as children's book writers. So we're going to cover all those things. You will walk away with a game plan of what your next steps are, what you need to do, and hopefully your head isn't spinning too much with the ideas, but that you will walk away more with a solid plan of where you're headed and what God is leading you to do. The other part is we're going to have photographers there who will take pictures of you you can use on social media, and we're going to do professional headshots, so you can also have those. Those are super expensive if you get them done, but we need them. You need them all the time. So that is something you'll walk away with. You'll walk away with new connections with other writers, and that alone is the most amazing part of any of these get-togethers with retreats and conferences. But the best part for me, at every one I've ever attended, I walk away with clarification. I know what God is calling me to do. It's like I meet with God. I get away from the busyness of my regular life, and I can really focus on my writing and what God is leading me to do. And it has been amazing every single time. We want you to walk away blessed. We want you to walk away knowing that you have been given many gifts and much information so that you know where you're headed. And so this is called the Storybook Inkspiration at the Castle. Like I said, August 19th through 23rd. The 19th is travel day because it's Broken Bow. So if you fly into Tulsa Airport, then you have 3 hours to drive to Broken Bow. If you drive from wherever you are, it's in southeastern Oklahoma in a forest, and there's a castle, and we will give you directions to meet us there. If you can get there by 5:30 on Wednesday the 19th, we're going to go to dinner in town, and then we'll come back to the castle and begin the retreat. If you can't get there till later, that's okay. We're going to have a time of devotional and worship after dinner that night, and announcements and all of those things. Then we'll go to bed, and the next day we will hit the ground running. The main part of the retreat, of course, is going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday morning we'll have another worship time and then head home. So that's the retreat. So even though it's the 19th through the 23rd, the bulk of it is the 20th through the 22nd. So if you have any questions, just ask. Go to the link that's in the show notes. We would love to have you there. We want every seat filled, but it is intimate. It is a small group so that we can answer every one of your questions. We're going to have a Q&A time. We're going to have roundtables where you can talk to editors and illustrators and writers and get your questions answered. Bring your one sheets if you have them for what you're already writing. Bring those so we can talk about your stories. If you have a manuscript you're ready to submit, you can submit it on the Saturday evening. We're having a pitch party, and Hyperbole Books and EA Publishing are both there, and we will be looking at your manuscripts. So you can pitch to us. If you're an illustrator, you can show your portfolio to the publishers and to our extraordinary. She's a speaker and illustrator and writer. Hannah Pruitt will be there, and she can give you her critique of your portfolio. So bring it all, and let's just have an amazing time in the castle in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. And the investment is so worth it. You will be blessed. Hopefully, if you have been a writer a long time, it will reignite a passion for what your calling is. If you haven't been writing for very long, or you're just thinking about it, I'm hoping you will leave there knowing exactly what God wants you to do. That's our hope and that's our goal. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for listening. We hope that this has sparked some ideas for you and inspiration for you. And remember, if you've got a child who is gifted in this way, or whatever way our children are gifted, we need to pour into that. We know that Proverbs tells us, raise up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they'll not depart from it. And that is talking about, in the Hebrew, the bent of that child's personality. What are their gifts? What are their sparks that they have in their life that we can help encourage and nurture and fan into flame so that they can be the person God created them to be. This is a wonderful thing that we have as parents, as mixed needs parents who are dealing with neurodivergent kids. They all have their thing that they are into. And so we can fan that into flame and help them to follow who God created them to be and to become that wholeheartedly. We hope you're encouraged, and we hope you feel empowered as a parent as we continue these special episodes. We will have our regular episodes peppered in between. And in those, of course, we are seeking to empower you, prepare you, equip you as parents to disciple your children with everyday discipleship every day. God bless you.